Welcome to another episode of Cocktails and Conversations with Adriana LaFay. I have Tory Glover here today with me. Hey, Tory, how you doing?
Hey, Adriana, how are you?
I am excellent. Excellent. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us today about breast cancer and your experience with it. So let's just jump right in. How did you find out that you had breast cancer?
Well, it's an interesting story because I felt the lump. I did do regular self-examinations, and I felt the lump probably 2-3 years before I actually said, let me get it checked out, because I thought it was just hormones. Like, you're getting older, your hormones change. So I was like, oh, it'll go away. So I was at work and I was talking to some of my coworkers that were older than me. Actually, they were all both above 40, and they was like, how old are you? And I was like, well, I turned 40 this year. Actually, I turned 40 in June. And they was like, well, it's time for you to get a mammogram. And I said, I know, but they was like, no, just go ahead and get the mammogram. And I put it off for like 3 or 4 more months before I actually went and got the mammogram done. And they was very supportive. And I was like, yeah, I don't think it's nothing. I went to my primary care first just to make sure that someone else felt what I felt. Mm-hmm. And she was like, yeah, it's definitely a lump. So let me just go ahead and send you across the street to the hospital so you can get a mammogram today. And I actually got a mammogram done that day.
Did they have to do the mammogram and the ultrasound, or did they just do the mammogram?
Well, because they saw something on the mammogram, they actually had to do the ultrasound as well. So when I went and got the mammogram done, the technician was like, okay, so I'm gonna have the radiologist to review it and see what he says. So she came back and the radiologist came back in the room and were like, hey, there's definitely something there. So let's just get an ultrasound done. So they sent me over to get the ultrasound done, and he was like, I want to refer you over to a surgeon.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay. He's like, it's too early to just tell anything. Everybody was very optimistic in the beginning. So of course, because everybody was so optimistic, I was like, oh, it's nothing.
Right.
It's nothing. So probably 3 days later, I went to see a breast surgeon.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, I definitely see something on the ultrasound and the mammogram. So what I actually like to do is do a biopsy. So that day in the office, 3 days later from my mammogram, he was like, I'm just gonna do a biopsy. I'm gonna stick a needle in, get a piece of the tissue, and then have it examined. And I'm like, huh? What'd you say? So he was like, yeah. So my mom, she went with me, and she came in and she was holding my hand while I do it. It was uncomfortable, but not painful.
Okay.
So
that was gonna be my next question.
He did numb the area first before he stuck this long needle in there, but I had to make sure I wasn't looking at needles because I don't like needles.
I know you don't.
So he was like, yeah. So the following week, he called me back in and said, it's definitely something. And it didn't, and he was still being optimistic. So the whole time I'm like, okay. So he was like, I want to go ahead and just remove it and, schedule to have the lump removed, and we'll go from there. I said, okay. So 2 weeks later, he scheduled for me to have the surgery to have the lump removed. I still had, the rest of my breast tissue, the rest of my breast, just a small incision to have the lump removed. Mm-hmm. That was it. And then after they did the biopsy of the actual lump, 2 weeks later, I went into the office and he was like, definitely breast cancer. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he was like, I don't think she understands what I said. My mom was in there too. And he was like, it's cancerous. It's malignant. And I was like, okay, all right. Because everybody had been so positive and, optimistic. I was like, it can't be bad.
Right.
He was like, so what I want to do is to do what you call it, an MRI of the whole breast tissue to see if there's any other areas that we need to be concerned with.
Okay.
Now that was the most painful thing ever because they had to do it in 2 different areas and they had to do it while I was in the MRI itself. So I was like, oh, I was screaming. I could feel the blood running down the side of my chest. Like it was painful. Like I wouldn't wish that on nobody. Out of everything that I went through, that MRI was the worst thing because they had to do that like 2 different areas. And 2 weeks later, the results came back that it was some other areas that, had cancer in them. So he said, I recommend you just remove the whole breast at this point. He said, because it's in 2 or 3 different areas, we would like to just remove all of the tissue.
On that one breast, or his spread to both?
Well, it was my decision. Well, he's like, we don't see anything on the MRI or the mammogram on your right side. So, but it's up to you. He said some people do decide to just take both of them, or some people just want to get the one they know for sure has the cancer in it. So I made a decision to just do the left breast to have it completely removed.
So was it difficult, once it finally sunk in, was it difficult to tell your family and friends about it?
Well, even though I think when it actually sunk in is when I had the bandages removed and I actually just had one breast. That's when it actually hit me like, wow, like I don't look like a woman anymore. I don't feel feminine anymore. And that's when it actually hit me. But my family was very supportive through everything. My mom went to all of my doctor's appointments with me, my brother and my sister, because I was having it seemed like every month for at least the first 6 months, I was in the hospital having some type of surgery done. So they were very supportive. It wasn't difficult at all telling my family. I think the most difficult part for me was seeing how my son and my nephew reacted to it. Because, they're young. My son, at the time, he was 20 and my nephew was 11 and 12. So that was the difficult part of it.
And you said that everybody was very supportive. How important do you think that was in your process, like your support system or your village?
I think it's very important because you have those moments where, like I said, you don't feel feminine, you don't feel like a woman because, even though it's something physical, but, that's what makes us different from men and, make us, have that feminine sex appeal, like our breasts. So not to have that, I had my moments where I was like, yeah, I don't know. Like at one point, I didn't even know if I wanted to have revision of the surgery to make a breast or even get a breast implant, because unfortunately, when I had the breast removed, my tissue died. So what they usually use to make or use an implant to make it look asymmetrical, I didn't have that.
Wow.
So after they removed the breast, I went back in for my follow-up like 2 weeks later, and my surgeon was like, your tissue has died. So now I have to go back in and remove, it was just the skin at that point. All of the actual inside tissue had been removed. He was like, I have to remove that tissue. So I was like, so what does that mean now? Like, you don't have any skin to cover up an implant at this point. So what do I do? He said, well, now we have to actually wait for that to completely heal. Something that would have took probably like 4 weeks. Now I had to wait 3 to 6 months.
Oh, wow.
With just having one breast. So that was very difficult, but having my family and my friends, support me and make sure that I didn't get too depressed, because I definitely got depressed. Yeah. But make sure I didn't get too depressed and, just stay in the house all the time. That was very, very helpful. So
you said it extended the time period for 3 to 6 months. So what year was this that it began, and what is the status now?
So I actually found out my diagnosis in September of 2017.
Okay.
I had my complete left breast removed December of 2017. So that was a fast process. Like, for me, having the biopsies, the MRIs, it was literally 3 months and I had my complete breast removed. And then in January, January of 2018, that's when I found out that they had to remove the tissue so I wouldn't even been able to get an implant, which is what I initially wanted. But he actually decided on why I had to wait, and I think I didn't actually get that surgery until September of 2018, my revision surgery. He actually decided just to use some tissue from my abdomen area and make a breast mound.
Okay.
So that's what I actually ended up doing. And then after that, there was like 3 additional surgeries to make it look as normal as he possibly could. So my last surgery was actually March of 2019.
Oh, wow. So almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, I am so glad that you are here today, that you listened to them and you went and got the mammogram. I like you, I do my self-checks. And ever since I had the hysterectomy, like, you know, they always tell you when it's your cycle, that's the best time to check it. Well, since I had the hysterectomy, I don't have a cycle, so I got to keep reminding myself, oh man, I need you to check. Yep. And earlier this year, it was right around the time that they was starting to do the lockdown, because I was nervous about going. But I had felt something too. And I went, just like you, I went to my primary care and she felt it. And then we went to the mammogram and they were like, no, it must have been hormones. We don't see nothing on the mammogram. We don't see nothing on the ultrasound. I was like, you sure you need to look again? I was like, no, you know what I mean? We don't see anything. They looked several times. I was like, okay, well, you know. So I can't imagine if they had come back differently, like what my mindset would have been like or whatever. So kudos to anyone, because men experience it too. So kudos to anyone that, you know, has gone through breast cancer, come out on the side of it. That's amazing. It's a blessing. Do you have any tips for women, or like I said, men, you know, that might be able to help somebody else?
Definitely do your self-examinations. That's like the most important thing. And even though for me, I waited 2 to 3 years before I actually saw Dr. Bob, because just like you, I thought, oh, it's hormones, like it'll go away. But I just made sure that when I checked it, it wasn't getting bigger. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, it seems like the same size. It seems like the same types. Maybe it's just hormones. And I have no family history of anyone in my family with breast cancer or any type of cancer. So that was another thing. But I did go ahead and get tested once I got diagnosed to make sure that it's not something in my cells that I can pass on to my son, or he can pass on to his kids. And they definitely said it wasn't anything genetic where I could pass on breast cancer. But of course, because I've been diagnosed, my family, my mom, my sister, and even my son have to, get checked regular. But another thing, and I tell my sister all this all the time, because I honestly think I got it from my phone.
I mean,
and I'm gonna tell you why,
because D'Angelo thinks that too. You have to put it in your.
Yep, I used to do that all the time before they came out with all this other stuff for your phone. I used to always just stick it in my chest, stick it in my bra, So I tell my sister all the time, like if I see her and she on the phone, I'd be like, what are you doing? Get your phone away from your chest. So that was another thing. I was like, it's just ironic that I've never had any issues before. And then when I started putting my phone in my chest, now I have it. So definitely do your self-examinations once you turn 40 years old. Make sure you get your annual mammograms. And I'm so thankful that I caught it early, because my cancer was stage 1. Okay. And that's because I caught it early. But if I would have just, kept waiting years and years, it would have progressed into something that probably wouldn't have been treatable.
Well, I tend to agree with you about the phone. I know, like I said, D'Angelo is very stickler about, doing all this research on the radiation from phones and stuff like that. And he's like, do not. So
Seriously.
I don't know. I believe you when you say that. And do you know the name of the test? Because I actually thought about getting that done. The test where they can see if it's a genetic thing. Because my mom, I don't know if I think I told you this. My mom passed away in 2005 from breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know the name of the test that?
I don't know the name of the test, but I can get you the information and I can send it to you.
Cool.
Because I still have the results. Because they actually, once you get the results, they go over it with you. The genetic actual company goes over the test with you to tell you if they see anything that could be an indicator. So definitely.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out to tell me your story, and it's very encouraging that you made it through and that you did take it seriously finally. And that it was just stage 1. So that's a blessing. I'm so happy that you're a breast cancer survivor, and it's not a different story that we're telling. So that's all for the episode today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tory, thank you again for coming, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.